Hello and welcome to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Philip Peck, Vice President, Advisory Services and Finance Transformation Practice, Peloton Group. We are excited to have Philip and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Prioritizing Collaboration and Communication for FP&A Success. Welcome, Philip. Over to you.
Thanks, Nick. Greetings, everyone. I'm extremely excited to be moderating this session as this topic is highly relevant for the FP&A community. And we have an outstanding group of FP&A leaders here today sharing their insights and wisdom throughout the panel discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to share just a bit about my background, and then I'll hand it over to our panelists to provide a profile on their background. As Nick said, I'm currently the Vice President of Advisory Services and Finance Transformation for the Peloton Consulting Group. Our company helps companies drive digital transformation across their enterprise, providing advisory, consulting, and managed services capabilities across enterprise performance management, enterprise resource management, supply chain management, human capital management, customer experience, analytics, and data management for the cloud. I've personally spent my entire career, 35 plus years in the FP&A domain area, working in various corporate roles, as well as management consulting roles, helping organizations explore the art of the possible and adopt leading-edge practices across the entire FP&A function. I would now like to have each of the session panelists introduce themselves. Andrew, can I start with you?
Sure. I'm Andrew Freeman. I'm actually the Director of FP&A for Weber. We're a heavy civil construction company based in Houston, Texas. So I also, like Philip, have been in the FP&A space most of my career since graduating from graduate school. So I've worked my way up from an analyst to my current role here, and I've been with Weber for about a little over 6 years.
Andrew, great, thank you. Stacy, how about yourself?
Hi, I'm Stacy. I am here in Canada, Canadian CPA CA, with over 20 years of experience in accounting and so forth. Currently, my role is the Director of FP&A here at Eastlink. We are a private telco in Canada with some operations in Bermuda as well. My role is to oversee the FP&A group, which includes the rolling 18-month forecast, the annual budget planning, the CPM systems, the ERP system, and we have some predictive analytics systems as well that fall underneath my group. So that's what we do.
Stacy, thank you. We have a lot under your purview, obviously.
I do.
And last but not least, Edward, how about yourself?
Hi, my name is Edward Fuchs. I'm the Director of FP&A at Delta Galil. Delta is a global apparel manufacturer and distributor with, and in particular, is a leader in intimates and activewear. I've spent my career at big companies like Delta, but also LVMH and Nestle, as well as some smaller family type businesses. I've done some time in DTC and subscription, so I've really had a chance to work on a lot of different business models. And I would say that the one thing that's been consistent throughout is that I've needed to work together with multiple departments in order to be successful and to do my job well. And I think that's what really attracted me to this session's topic. So I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. Given your very diverse backgrounds, I'm definitely anticipating a great session here. So let's dive in. The first question, and I'm going to start with you, Andrew, and then go to Stacy, and then go to you, Edward. The question, from your experience, how has the FP&A function evolved over the last couple of years? Andrew, you first.
Sure. I would say, because when I originally started a while ago, but we were more of a spoke, kind of a spoke on a wheel. So we were mainly reporting budgets, forecasts, not really. The analytics was sort of at a level with, at the C-suite level, we do analytics, but we were just a spoke, just like accounting, just like marketing, just like HR. But I think over the last few years, it's especially here at Weber and even at previous companies I was at, we've transitioned more into we're the hub. So all the other functions kind of feed into us, and we're the bridge between the business and some of mainly accounting. And I always say to my team, we're storytellers. So we take the numbers, we make a story out of it for the executives to understand what's going on in understanding their business. So, and we're financed with a business understanding, and we're not business people, but we definitely can help translate those numbers from the accounting team and from the other operations to help them drive their business. So that's my evolvement, so that's how I've seen it evolve.
Andrew, thank you. Based on my experience, I think you really nailed it on the head there, the transition that has occurred over time with the FP&A function, and emphasis on that storytelling, the ability to take something that could be highly complex or people struggle to understand and rip apart and put back together. That's a gift, and that's the secret sauce that FP&A brings to bear. Yeah, Stacy, how would you respond to that question?
Oh, I completely agree with Andrew. It used to be kind of you were off to the side, and the budget was one thing that happened once a year, and then it just kind of was done. But I've seen it evolve more, like not only on becoming more of a business partner with all of the operations and the different units and making sure that everyone is intertwined, but also from the technology standpoint as well. From Excel hell it used to be, trying to do all the consolidations and bring in all the information, and then if you had time, try and find the non-financials to meld in with it, to going into predictive analytics, being able to do like an 18-month rolling forecast on the fly, and into some like systems where you can do what if scenarios and ensure that everything's running the same way and people are using the same set of numbers.
No, that's great. Phrase I've co-opted from someone else, but I tend to use it rather liberally. The tyranny of spreadsheets. We all in FP&A, we have a love-hate relationship with the world of Excel. Exceedingly powerful, user-friendly, but there's so many considerations when you think about in many organizations, a fragmented mess of Excel hell, as you described it. I think you characterized that well. Edward, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think with Andrew and Stacy really nailed it on the head. I mean, to me, it comes down to technology and people. So from the tech side, in the past 10, 15 years, certainly the amount of data that we need to process and look at has really grown exponentially, right? And so now we've had to adapt our processes and our tools and our skill sets to be able to keep up with that. And so whether it's learning how to use different BI platforms or cloud platforms, or now of course machine learning and AI is the hot buzzword. I haven't quite cracked on how to get that in place for myself, but being able to manage these huge data sets has become increasingly important and really necessary in order to be successful in the FP&A role. And then on the side of people, I think also that the profile of what we look for in FP&A roles and candidates has shifted. Historically, it was probably more focused on the finance side. I myself am designated as a CMA CPA from Canada, but I think now there's more room for people who have some background in financial acumen, but really being more open to people who have more diverse backgrounds. So for myself, having worked with strong brands, I've needed to understand what the marketing team is talking about when they're spending millions of dollars on digital marketing, and like what is a ROAS. I need to be able to be a good business partner. So having people on my team who speak those languages is increasingly important.
I think those are great points as we all think about the profile that we need today, tomorrow, and into the future, and the constant evolution. As you highlighted, there's leading edge principles, AI, machine learning, predictive analytics. We keep going, but increasingly we're asking ourselves and our teams to say, we need to ramp up. we need to learn, we need to explore, and we need to start trying those things as we know that the FP&A world will continue to evolve. Let's take a turn a bit on our next question. And I'll start with you, Stacy, then go to Edward, then Andrew. How does your team successfully promote cross-team collaboration and communication? Could you share what you would consider some best practices that you've used?
Well, I know we were given the questions ahead of time. So I'm assuming this means the question is mostly within my team. So we make sure that we know we have a full calendar out there. We know exactly when things are going to happen, who relies on who, the different steps going through. You need to understand the full business in order to put the steps in the right order. You can't figure out your cost of sales until you know how many sales you're going to have. You won't know when the revenue is coming in until you know when the sales take place. And so everyone has to have a good idea of exactly what is happening, what the assumptions are, what the timelines are, and how everything interconnects. And making sure that the team collaborates so that they know, like, everyone's working off of the same basic assumptions, that the timelines work not only for when you want things to get done within the planning process, but also so that all of the plans work together. You can't have someone out doing their own plan in a silo that doesn't interact, because everything feeds to something else, and every decision affects something else along within the plan. So we make sure that everyone knows, like, we keep a calendar organized, we know the steps, we have our teams has brought us well into the future kind of thing, where we can just kind of quickly have the whole team there and say, okay, I've done this, now it's your turn, right? Workflows can help with that too, so that you know along the process who's done what, and then templates that are utilized by everyone. Same template, maybe different inputs, but if there are corporate-wide assumptions that need to be there, like foreign exchange rates or things like that you want everybody using the same, you make sure that it's well communicated so that everyone's working together.
Those are great insights. My mind immediately jumps to terms that we hear in the industry, like connected planning, integrated business planning. The left hand knows what the right hand's doing, upstream and downstream, the implications of the assumptions we're making. And while we have different roles and responsibilities in an integrated planning process, we need to be working from that common playbook or that common set of assumptions.
Yeah.
Edward, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I really look at it, very similar to how one might look at a personal relationship. You really want to make sure that the lines of communication are open with your various business partners. And I think it's important to schedule a regular date night, right? So it's not just that you're getting in touch with them when you need something, but put something on the books monthly, bi-monthly, whatever it is, so that you're forcing yourself to meet up with them and see what's going on in their world. They can see what's going on in your world, and really kind of force the communication to make sure that everyone's on the same page. I think that all those messages that you would hear, like I said, for a relationship would really hold true within an organization. And I think it's quite unlikely that you'll get to a point where you're over communicating rather than the other way around. Specifically then from the FP&A function, what I've done in the past is have my team do these Excel training roadshows where we'll actually go in and sit with other departments, look at their processes, and in part learn from them, because those people who are in the different functions are definitely experts in their fields and know their function quite well. But since we all use Excel, they're probably also interfacing with Excel in a fairly manual way, and just doing things in order to meet the needs of finance, let's say. And so I found that having my team sit with people in other departments is mutually beneficial. One, it lets the FP&A function learn in a more in-depth way about how those departments function and operate and what's important to them. And potentially also, offer tips and trainings within Excel, let's say, so they can make their own processes faster, better, more accurate, what have you. And really, it comes away as a win-win.
I love it. I'm gonna I'm gonna have the takeaway of date night in a corporate setting. I love the analogy, and also the way that you're describing the roadshow and the interaction. That's the essence of business partnering. That's like developing the credibility and those ongoing relationships such that you earn the right to then add value from an FP&A perspective as you're working with all of your business constituents. That's powerful. Andrew, how about yourself on this question?
Yeah, I would actually agree with both Stacy and Edward. I mean, especially, I'm a huge person on process. So we do the same thing. We have this calendar, we march to it, we make sure we all try to stay within the process. When the process breaks down, there's, we, like any good FP&A person, we try to switch it. But I love the date night analogy too. My big thing I learned early on from a director who was my mentor a while back, that a good FP&A person is not tied to their desk. And so I'm big on, with my team and previous teams, that we need to be out there in the business, so that way you understand the business and their needs. Because when they have an issue, we want to be the first point of contact for them. And then that way, what we've done here at Weber is we'll be the contact person, and then we will help with getting accounting or HR or whoever needs to be involved in that decision or in that correction and get it sorted out. And that way we have the process. But then we are their needs, and we kind of understand what they want, and then they understand what we need. So then we are the true business partner of what they want to do. But definitely an FP&A person shouldn't be tied to their desk. They need to be out in the business. I'm actually going to take Edward's thing of Excel training. That's actually an excellent idea. So just working with those people, that way whenever they have a problem with finance, you're the first person they contact, not doing something that they don't understand, and then you're kind of cleaning it up on the back end after you've closed the books and trying to explain it in a reporting. So
I think you've reinforced again one of your original comments, Andrew, that FP&A's become the hub and not the spoke. So here you're that primary point of contact. You're the first line of defense, if you will, in some sense. I think that's great. Let's keep going here on our questions, and I'll start this one with you, Edward, then Stacy, then Andrew. In what ways does improving enterprise-wide communication strengthen the bottom line?
Sure. I think it's really all about creating alignment on your organization's strategic goals, right? You want to make sure that everyone across the company, across departments, are all working towards the same goals, priorities, and metrics. I think that without having this level of transparency and communication, you'll have everyone kind of existing in their own silos, trying to do their best for their own kind of personal or departmental objectives, without seeing the bigger picture. And this can very often have pretty detrimental effects of, let's say, a production team maximizing their or rather minimizing the cost per unit, that really considering what's the sales forecast. So you want to make sure that everyone understands what the other teams are doing, and that and the way to do that is to be, like I said, to be transparent, but also consistent with how you're communicating that from a leadership perspective. Very, very obviously, I think that having communication across departments will reduce duplication and waste, because you'll realize that team is already working on this project. I don't need to have my team focus on that. Instead, we can work on something else. But and essentially that allows you to allocate your resources more efficiently. I think with Nestle, from my background, they have this concept of center of excellences, where they'll have, let's say, within the finance stream, they'll have one team focused on IFRS 16 implementation, and then they'll communicate out with all the different various business units and get information from them. And I think that what otherwise would happen is that you would have, some finance team sitting somewhere crunching the numbers on a real estate transaction by themselves without understanding the bigger picture of what is the sales potential. And so really it's about creating alignment across the board on like I said, on the objectives, and also minimizing risk. The only way you could find out about things that are going on in the macro environment is by having communication. And so by having a way to bring everyone together and communicate, you're finding out, what are the areas of opportunities and risks, and how do you adapt your business to address those.
Those are great perspectives. Thinking about the last one, just that whole concept of awareness of everything that's going on in the organization internally, but also externally, because a certain constituent or stakeholder might not completely understand the implications of something that's happening. So to your point, that transparency and communication is essential. So you can navigate the risks and the opportunities. Stacy, how about your thoughts on this one? And you're on mute, Stacy.
All right. I completely agree. You need to have the entire enterprise working together. You can't, the communication, if you have someone going off on their own with their own little plan or their own little agenda that doesn't fit in with the rest of the plan, then everyone will fail. So you really need to have it so that everyone there's a lot of communication going on, the understanding too, making sure that not just the FP&A team understand the timelines and such, but that the whole, end-to-end group understands what they do does affect, or what they plan to do does affect other departments. So, sales for us, sales, they will affect the installations. Sales affects what we bring in as supplies, even down to the point of understanding the retail environment, when is retail the busiest, and so on. So you really need to communicate with everyone and have everyone working towards one goal, one plan, and you need that from all levels. You need the lowest, kind of person on the group to the highest person in the company. Everyone needs to be involved with the overall strategy, or it goes astray.
Those are great points, and I think that connects a bit of the dots with some of the points you made, Edward, on that alignment around the strategy. And you're now speaking, Stacy, to the cascading throughout the entirety of the organization. So those individuals know their role vis-a-vis the strategic objectives, and then the tactical initiatives we're executing against, and then ultimately FP&A helping to translate that into financial expectations. Andrew, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm like Stacy. It's for us, it's top down, especially here at Weber. One of our CEOs, one of his pillars, or his phrases are know your numbers. And he cascades that down to even the project teams for the heavy civil projects that we're working on. Know your numbers for your project. Know your numbers for your little task in that major project. And so we are all sort of marching towards that same beat that, hey, we need to know your numbers. So, a project engineer needs to know his numbers, a project manager, a VP, and that way we're all sort of working towards the same goal and the bottom line. And it kind of is driven us through. And we've had, several years here of record growth and record profits, for a construction company, which the margins for us are rather low. So but it's mainly driven to me from the top down, and then sort of FP&A supporting that by ensuring that people have their numbers. So,
that makes complete sense. And I've been with some other organizations who have a similar mantra, where it's heavily reinforced from the executive leadership and then just pushed down the organization, so people kind of embrace that mantra. Let's keep going here. Next question. Andrew, you'll be first, then Stacy, then Edward. How are you harnessing cross-functional planning to promote agility, flexibility, and resilience?
Especially here at Weber, I think how we've evolved, and my group mainly, we manage the whole overhead process for forecasting and budgeting. And originally it was a heavy spreadsheet driven process with us sort of doing most of the heavy lifting. In order to help with agility and the flexibility, we about 5 years ago implemented a software tool to help us with that. And it's sort of what it was, the software tool allowed was we were able to put the head count data into the tool and the information, but we were able to give that template out to the divisions or the department head for him or her to work on the information. So kind of giving them, hey, we've given you the tools, but we're still there to help you work on it. We're there as a partner, and we do that with the HR team, the IT team, so we're there to support them. But it allowed actually them to take more of an ownership of their overheads. In the past, when I first arrived here, it was that's not my forecast, it's finance's forecast. And now it was more for them, it was, yeah, that's your forecast because you put it into the tool, so it gave them sort of their ownership, their numbers, and so then they were able to work with that. And also for us, it was also an improvement in process and speed. So we used to take, and right now we're in the process of starting that overhead forecast and budget for next year. It would be almost a month and a half process for us. We're now down to 2 weeks in doing it. So it was taking something from our Excel hell or tyranny or death by Excel, and then moving it into sort of into a tool that actually helps us with sort of improve the process. It also eliminated a bunch of errors on our end and on the errors of the division. So I think that's probably kind of segues into another question that I know we're discussing later about transformation strategies, but that's kind of where we've taken it to the improved agility and sort of flexibility with us.
No, that's great. The outcomes you were able to achieve, significant reduction in cycle time, greater ownership and accountability for the plans themselves, and probably a higher quality and accuracy at the end of the day. That's really powerful. Stacy, your thoughts on this question?
I would say, the use of technology has brought us really leaps and bounds ahead of where we used to be. Using Excel to try and collaborate is not easy. So we implemented a system a few years ago. Our second one, our first one got sunset. We moved to something even better. But we find it that we partner with the FP&A team, we partner with the accounting team and the business, and we make sure that the business has their input. Like Andrew was saying, they get the input. It's their ownership of their numbers, and we are there to help facilitate the conversation and show them, like, if you change this is the effect it will have. This is what it will do with your numbers. And we make sure, like, we meet with the business almost monthly with different departments, just to make sure that we're understanding where things are going, how the plan is going, how each department is affecting the other. So there's lots of communication and such going on. But also empowering people to understand their budgets. And it doesn't just come from the finance team, like, oh, the finance team made up these numbers, right? Because nobody owns that then. And you want ownership across the company. So you need to give people the right tools, like Andrew said. If you give them the right tools and you make it not scary, because I know, like, a lot of people who are not in finance find finance very scary. That they're just going to run off and do their thing. But if we can show them how it all, how easy it can be, and we'll be the calculators for you. You tell us in the words and we'll get it in there. So it's, yeah, I think, all of the cross functioning and stuff it helps a lot to make sure that everyone's understanding things.
You just highlighted a lot of gems in that statement there, Stacy, and I think you're combining many of the elements we've been talking about this whole panel discussion, from leveraging the tools and technologies, the more distributed nature of planning, providing the training and education, and making it as easy as possible for these people. It's not their number one priority, probably, from the budgeting and forecasting. So you have to help them get there. Edward, how about yourself on this question?
Yeah, I just think that Stacy commented on a really good point, is that a lot of people view finance as these bad guys who are going to come in and cut budgets, and really that's not what we're here for. We're here to help and grow the business overall. But so that just kind of really connected with me. But in response to the question, this makes me think most about a past forecasting process that we went through, where initially the sales forecast was really just driven by the sales team, and it kind of came from them, and they would work to meet it. The problem is that not necessarily everyone was aligned on it, and so what we ended up migrating towards is what I call consensus planning. So we had the sales team promote one forecast that they worked up, then the demand planning team would come up with another, and finance would come up with a third. Usually finance was the most conservative, and the sales team was next, and then demand planning liked to overachieve because they wanted to make sure they had that inventory to support it all. And so by coming together, we were able to align on the consensus forecast. And I found it very useful, because by coming together and really working through our assumptions, we could challenge each other and what are the underlying enablers in order to achieve the different forecasts that we have. Usually we wouldn't have been too far apart, but also having that spread let us do some scenario planning. And so to me that was really quite useful. And then an offshoot that would be more the operational side of it, to make sure that if we go from this level to this level, which would be the higher scenario, what do we need to do in order to make sure that we could supply that? And so I think having, as we've been saying, open lines of communication and coming up with a number together rather than just being from one source, whether it be sales or top down, I think that's the way to improve agility and also improve buy-in.
Great points. I know in my personal experiences, that whole concept of the consensus planning and the critical role that FP&A and finance play in being able to be a bit of the arbiter and get the right people together and help them appreciate implications of whether it's the sales side, whether it's the demand side, whether it's the ability to supply it from an ops perspective. Finance can absolutely help and be that glue to bring it all together and help drive the right level of discussions and decision making. So at the end of the day, the organization is optimizing business performance given all the considerations. Next question here, we've touched on a bit of it, so maybe we'll go through it reasonably quickly. But this question being, which Stacy, you first, Edward, then Andrew, what digital transformation strategies have you used or would you like to use to promote better collaboration and communication capabilities?
Well, we've had quite the digital transformation over the past few years, from individual Excel files and hundreds of them, to using a CPM system to combine everything, to using a predictive analytics tool for our forecasting and such. We've been able to move beyond the typical data entry that ends up being part of an Excel process, to really having all of the data, all kinds of different areas for different KPIs come in, have the system do those calculations, have the system automatically create those reports, and empower the team to really be the ones that understand the analysis, right? Really figure out what is the true story behind those numbers, because like we said in the very beginning, we're the storytellers, and we have to be able to put the words to the analysis so that proper business decisions can be made. It can't really do a forecast if you don't understand the history, but then you have to also understand how much of the history is relevant. And accountants tend to work in the past, and FP&A works in the future, and we need to make sure that everyone understands that you don't want to spend hours and hours just doing data entry. You want to really make sure that your systems are working for you. And like Edward said, if you have a system that you can put in those 3 different scenarios and come up to the consensus and have it look, and then very quickly just adjust the different scenarios and then come to somewhere probably in the middle where everybody's happy, that's fantastic. What I would really like to do going forward, like we've expanded so much into what we do, with all the different KPIs coming in and different non-financial data to use. I really want to get us into the full, like we're not there yet, like yeah, we're on our path, but the path to get the full supply chain planning piece of it actually really well integrated. That's the piece we don't have yet. We have, HR, we have sales, we have everything from there forward, but not that ultimate beginning part. So I'd like to be able to say, oh, it takes Apple so long to get us a certain mobile device, so we need to know if this is when the sale's going to happen. This is when we need to put the order in with Apple and go from there. So that's where I want to be.
Love your vision. That's true integrated business planning through the entirety of your value chain. That's exciting. Actually, I love you have a vision, and it sounds like you also have a roadmap, and you're making great progress. That's fantastic. Edward, how about you on digital transformation in this topic?
Yeah, I think that having an FP&A tool, whether CPM, ERP, what have you, that's cloud-based, really goes a long way towards ensuring communication across departments. But I think even in absence of that, in my organization, for example, we're in the middle of trying to implement one. There's a lot of tools that are available now that most organizations have access to, whether it's let's say Microsoft SharePoint, where you can share files in the cloud. I think that is in itself a huge improvement over emailing files back and forth between people, which not only creates issues of version control, but it means you're somewhat limited in the analysis you can do with any one file, and different people will be looking at different data depending on which version of the file they've incorporated so far. And so by using these online cloud tools, you can really help ensure that everyone's looking at the same thing more or less at all time. And so to Stacey's point, rather than being retrospective and just looking at the past, you can build a model that everyone's looking at in more or less in real time, and be looking towards the future. Probably there's also good collaboration project management tools out there that help organize projects and making sure of what deliverables are expected from different parties, and when is it due by when, so that everyone could really have a holistic view of the status of any given project at any given time. And I think by adopting these new technologies and new tools, you can really help ensure alignment, and kind of going back to the early point, is making sure everyone's on the same page for the company's goals.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree with you. There are, to your point, these cloud-based products greatly promote the collaboration, alignment, awareness. Just where are you? Because all of you have been describing, you have a cadence, you have a process. We're FP&A people. That's what we do, and we're very good at it. But now some of these tools just elevate the ability to see that. Where are you at any point in time in your process? Andrew, how about yourself on this? Before
Yeah,
we last
I,
one?
yeah, our organization is a little bit slower at the digital transformation, but one thing we're looking at, and we're still a lot of heavy Excel, but one thing we're looking at, especially pulling things out of our GL system, which is a large, massive GL system because we're owned by a larger international company. We're looking at robotic process automation, RPA. So my goal with that is to give, where we can take a task, especially during our, what we call it the pre-close process, where we're closing the books and we're running numbers, we're downloading flat files over and over out of a system. And so it's our way of sort of, if we can get that to be a robotic process, have that so that we can do it on demand and my team can spend more time figuring out, hey, what's going on with the numbers, so that when we do go into our pre-close meeting with our accounting team, our accounting project team, make sure that things are within sync so that we're not far off from the numbers. Because my goal is I prefer that FP&A, a lot of times it's 80-20. We're spending 80 time creating reports, 20% analyzing or looking at the story. I would like to flip it so that we're 20% with the reports and 80% looking at the numbers and analyzing and making predictions, understanding what's going on. And I think especially with us kind of on a slower digital transformation here at Weber, that RPA will help us with our cash flow reporting, since we can just have that thing on the bot, as we call it, automatically download flat files and then we can have it run our Excel macro spreadsheets that we have. So that's kind of one area where we're kind of using something new, the RPA process, to kind of improve our things to help us with making things a little bit easier for my team, but then also improving our outflow, that we can spend more time doing what we like to do, which is the analytics side of things.
That's a great perspective. Shifting the pendulum from spending the bulk of your time on the finding data, transforming data, reconciling data, to adding the value-added insights, but also your perspective as you're describing your organization. Everyone has a different evolution path. Some are more mature than others, but you're finding some high priority, high value add areas, RPA and your bots, where you see immediate, or you will see hopefully immediate improvements and able to elevate the game for FP&A. Last question, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A, as we're starting to see some pretty good questions coming in. So the last question, which start with you, Edward, then Andrew, then Stacy. What are the biggest challenges the FP&A function faces while trying to improve efficiency? And with those challenges as context, how do you overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, so in my view, it really comes down to people, data, and resources. So first, from the people side, I think no matter what, across all departments, you're going to have some individuals who are resistant to change, and they've become accustomed to their processes and their workflows, and have more trouble seeing the benefit of changing that dynamic. I can think of a time in my past when we realized we're spending lots of money on marketing without really understanding the return on it. And so I worked with my team to implement a process to create a pre-evaluation and a post-evaluation, and really help have the marketing team submit something that lets us benchmark the performance of any marketing campaign. And at first, the marketing team saw this as being just an extra time, more time consuming, more red tape, more bureaucracy coming from finance. But over time, we had kind of helped them realize that no, this is a useful tool for them, because then they could get better exposure with leadership who would be seeing these evaluations, understanding, oh, this is what we're spending these millions of dollars on, but also let them understand what is giving them the most bang for their budget, a buck. And really it turned into a tool that was quite useful. So I think finding ways to work with people who are potentially resistant to change, helping them see the benefit and how it benefits not only you as the finance guy, but also them in their local departments. That's a key. From the data side, like I said earlier, we're getting massive amounts of data from potentially different data sources. And the key to any FP&A function is to try to standardize data as much as possible. And this can be challenging, especially if you have a homegrown ERP solution in one place, and then you're pulling data maybe from your warehouse, which is coming in a different format. And this really ties into my last point, which is resources, which is that it takes time to implement the standardization, and you need to have your leadership support you in making the investment into either changing platforms, creating some sort of adoption of a new tool, or changing things up in order to make the data that you're pulling more consistent and more reliable, and being able to actually analyze it in a way that benefits the organization.
Wow, great, great perspective. And yeah, I think you hit upon the critical pillars: people, data, and resources. And then along with resources, the commitment of the executive team to appreciate that it's a journey, and that journey of standardization, of getting things right, it takes time, and depending on the organization, can take a long time. Andrew, how about yourself on this question?
Yeah, I agree with Edward, but also for us, it's resources with IT, especially with the digital transformation. For us, we run a pretty small, all of our groups, are pretty small, but so sort of IT having the time and the energy, or not the time, energy, but more the time to support us on our improvements, especially the digital. So in order to overcome that, especially with the RPA process that we're trying to implement, is we said we could help you with doing some of the heavy lifting on our side, just help us sort of how we should do this, and that way we can work together. So kind of taking my FP&A spoke hub thing back around, and communication back to them to sort of partner with the IT team on what we can do to help them with our process that we would like improvement on. But for us, it's really, especially in the post-COVID world, it's IT, because IT team has become more important, especially with teams and all that, and getting things sort of more collaborative where we are, so that we can either work from home, work from the office, work wherever we want. So that for us, it's getting the IT time and support, and that's mainly our biggest challenge and our biggest resource. Luckily, I have an executive team who's interested in sort of digital transformation, and so they want to spend time on improving the FP&A function, the FP&A processes. But it's just those tools all require some sort of IT support, and that's one of our challenges.
Right. Well, the good thing is you have the executive support, so
right.
It's making it work still is hard work and heavy lifting, but at least you've got the support. Stacy, before we finish here, how about your thoughts at the end here?
I have to agree. People is the biggest challenge. You're always going to have people who are a little bit resistant to change. So you have to find a way to show them that the change is going to be good for them. The change to improve the efficiency. So, you don't need to be the one keying in these little pieces of data so that you can do the analytics. We can get the system to do that for you, and it will spit it out. And then that gives you more time to do the analytics, and really understand your numbers and understand what's happening. And I know people are inherently scared of change. And so, there's people who you have to prove that the machine spitting out some of these numbers is right. So you'll still have the person that takes it and rekeys stuff just to make sure that it still did it right. And so you gotta get people over that hump. It's a little difficult. There can be times. And then there's also the fear that you're going to have as we start talking about AI and such, that there's going to be a fear of replacement. And everyone needs to understand that you can't replace the critical thinking. You can replace somebody just keying in numbers, taking it from that system to that system and just keying stuff in, but you can't replace the insight that the humans need. So we're going into a time where you need to make sure that people feel like they're adding value And, so really embracing that and helping with that to show them, like the system can do this like 10 times faster, gives you like 3 extra hours, a week for you to put your story to this and not just give a number and have people ask you questions you already have the answers to. So.
Very, very well stated. And before I hand this back to Nick here, I want to thank the three of you. I have found this session fantastic. I know, the participants, I'm sure, appreciate the insights, your experiences, your wisdom, and specifically a few of the gems. I think, Edward, you made my day with date night. So that's good. That's right. Of all the takeaways, I just love the concept. But seriously, thanks for being participants in this panel discussion. Nick, with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Well, thank all of you for such an insightful panel discussion. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event.